Syria, once a beacon of history and culture in the Middle East, a land where ancient civilizations thrived and left their mark through breathtaking architecture and rich traditions, is now synonymous with tragedy. The recent mass killings, a grim chapter in an already devastating conflict, claiming the lives of over 1,500 innocent civilians, have left communities shattered and families in perpetual mourning. This marks a horrifying escalation in the ongoing conflict. The surge of violence, with its relentless bombings and fierce battles, serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of the Syrian civil war. The streets, once bustling with life, are now scenes of devastation and despair. It underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution and a commitment to justice. The international community must come together, not just in words but in actions, to bring an end to this suffering. The world watches in horror as these atrocities unfold, with news channels broadcasting the grim reality into homes across the globe. People everywhere are left questioning how such brutality could be inflicted upon innocent people. The images of grief-stricken families, of children who have lost their parents, and of communities torn apart are a stark call to our shared humanity. The stories of the victims, their lives cut short, their families torn apart, demand attention and action. These are not just numbers, they are human beings with dreams, hopes, and loved ones. This is a call to action, a plea for peace, and a demand for accountability. The world must not turn a blind eye to the suffering in Syria. It is time for a concerted effort to bring about lasting peace and justice for the Syrian people. To understand the current situation, we must delve into the roots of the Syrian civil war. This conflict, which has ravaged the nation for over 10 years, has deep and complex origins that intertwine with regional and global politics. It began in 2011, amidst a wave of uprisings across the Arab world. Known as the Arab Spring, these movements sought to challenge oppressive regimes and demand greater freedoms and rights. In Syria, protests erupted against the authoritarian rule of President Bashar al-Assad. Citizens took to the streets calling for democratic reforms and an end to corruption. The government responded with brutal force, cracking down on dissent and igniting a full-blown civil war. The initial peaceful protests quickly turned violent as the regime used military might to suppress the opposition. Over the past decade, the conflict has escalated into a complex web of warring factions. What started as a struggle for political change has morphed into a multifaceted war involving numerous groups with varying agendas. These include the Syrian government, various rebel groups, foreign powers, and extremist organizations. Each faction has its own goals, further complicating the path to peace. Each group vying for control, each adding fuel to the fire of violence that engulfs the nation. The involvement of international actors has only intensified the conflict, making it a proxy battleground for global powers. Millions have been displaced, their homes destroyed, their lives shattered. The humanitarian crisis is staggering, with countless families torn apart and communities left in ruins. The scars of this war will be felt for generations to come. The recent mass killings represent a horrifying escalation in the Syrian conflict. Over 1,500 civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, were brutally murdered in a series of coordinated attacks. These atrocities targeted primarily Alawite communities, a minority group to which President Assad belongs. While the exact perpetrators remain unclear, reports suggest the involvement of armed groups previously affiliated with Turkish-backed factions. These groups, once part of the rebellion against Assad, now stand accused of horrific crimes against humanity. The brutality of the killings is deeply disturbing. Eyewitness accounts and unverified videos depict scenes of unimaginable horror. The recent massacres exacerbate an already dire humanitarian crisis in Syria. Over 16 million people require humanitarian assistance. Millions have been displaced, forced to flee their homes in search of safety. Refugee camps in neighboring countries are overflowing, struggling to cope with the influx of desperate families. The Syrian people are trapped in a cycle of violence and displacement. Access to basic necessities like food, water, and medical care is severely limited. The ongoing conflict, coupled with bureaucratic obstacles and damaged infrastructure, hinders aid delivery. Hospitals and ambulances targeted in the violence struggle to provide essential care. Section 5. The World Responds. calls for peace and justice. The international community has responded with widespread condemnation of the mass killings. The UN Secretary-General expressed deep concern, urging all parties to protect civilians and respect international humanitarian law. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights echoed these concerns, stressing the need for accountability and transitional justice. Diplomatic efforts to revive peace talks are underway, but progress remains slow. The international community must demand a ceasefire, unhindered humanitarian access, and a commitment to a political solution. The Syrian people deserve an end to the violence and a chance to rebuild their lives. Section 6. The Syrian government's response, a glimmer of hope. In response to the massacres, interim President Ahmed al-Sharaa announced the formation of a fact-finding committee. This committee, tasked with investigating the killings and identifying the perpetrators, is expected to deliver its findings within 30 days. While this is a positive step, it remains to be seen if it will lead to genuine accountability. The Syrian government has also called for the lifting of sanctions and increased international support for reconstruction efforts. Rebuilding Syria after a decade of war will be a monumental task, requiring a coordinated global effort. Section 7. Seeking accountability, the long road to justice. The pursuit of justice for the victims of the Syrian conflict is paramount. The perpetrators of these horrific crimes, whether individuals or groups, must be held accountable. This includes not only those responsible for the recent massacres, but also those who have committed atrocities throughout the war. The international community must support mechanisms for documenting and investigating war crimes. This includes supporting the International Criminal Court, establishing special tribunals, and providing resources for evidence gathering. Justice is not only about punishment, it is about acknowledging the suffering of the victims and deterring future atrocities. Section 8. The Kurdish Question, a Path to Stability. Amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of hope. A recent agreement between the Syrian government and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, offers a potential path towards stability. This agreement aims to integrate the SDF into state institutions, recognizing the Kurdish minority's role in a future Syria. While challenges remain, this agreement could serve as a model for reconciliation and power sharing in post-conflict Syria. It is crucial to ensure that all ethnic and religious groups have a voice in the country's future. Section 9. A plea for Syria, ending the nightmare. The situation in Syria is dire, but we must not give in to despair. The images of destroyed buildings, displaced families, and children who have known nothing but war are heart-wrenching. Yet amidst this devastation, there is a glimmer of hope. The resilience of the Syrian people is a testament to their strength and determination to survive against all odds. The international community must act decisively to end the violence, alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people, and hold the perpetrators of these crimes accountable. Diplomatic efforts and international cooperation are crucial. Leaders from around the world must come together, setting aside their differences, to forge a path to peace. Humanitarian aid workers on the ground are doing their best, but they need our support and resources to continue their vital work. We must demand a ceasefire, ensure unhindered humanitarian access, and support efforts to rebuild shattered lives. Peace talks must be prioritized, and all parties involved must be willing to compromise for the greater good. Humanitarian aid must reach those in need without delay, and rebuilding efforts must focus on creating a sustainable and peaceful future for Syria. We must amplify the voices of the Syrian people, demanding peace, justice, and a brighter future for their nation. The courage of those who protest and speak out, even in the face of danger, is inspiring. Their voices must be heard, and their demands for justice and peace must be met with action. Let us not forget the victims of this tragedy. Each life lost is a reminder of the cost of inaction. Memorials and vigils serve as poignant reminders of the human toll of this conflict. We must honor their memory by working tirelessly to prevent further loss of life. Let their stories fuel our commitment to action. The personal accounts of Syrian refugees and survivors are powerful and moving. Their resilience and hope in the face of unimaginable hardship should inspire us all to take action. By sharing their stories, we can raise awareness and galvanize support for the Syrian cause. Let us work together to ensure that Syria, once a land of beauty and history, can find its way back from the brink of despair. The rich cultural heritage and natural beauty of Syria must be preserved for future generations. By coming together, we can help restore peace and stability, allowing the Syrian people to rebuild their lives and their country.